The Justice Department expects to show that the clear and intended effects of these changes would contract the electorate and result in unequal access to the participation in the political process on account of race.
While congressional Republicans are being accused of fighting a losing battle on defunding Obamacare, to my mind, what you just heard is Attorney General Eric Holder signing up for an ultimately and clearly losing battle in suing the state of North Carolina, a suit he filed on Monday for violating the Voting Rights Act, that North Carolina's new voter ID law discriminates against African Americans. We'll discuss this with me tonight. In tonight's Q&A is David French. He's counsel at the American Center for Law and Justice. David, I just described it as a losing battle. Now, let me tell you why. The Supreme Court recently said the burden of proof is on the Department of Justice to clearly show that any law, in this case, North Carolina's voter ID law, has intended discriminatory effects. How will the DOJ, how will Attorney General Eric Holder show that a voter ID law, and I could put up a map, that many states have at this point? I think something like, 4 states have required photo ID requirements for voting, while several more have photo part of the ID optional. How will he show that these states, particularly this one, North Carolina, this is intended simply to discriminate?
I don't think he can show that. I mean, look, in 2008, the Supreme Court upheld strict voter ID requirements just like that in North Carolina. It was upheld by the Supreme Court in 2008 in Indiana. And Indiana has requirements like this, has had them for years. It has not had an impact on participation. What requirements like this are about are voter confidence, ballot integrity. There's not just ballot access, there's also ballot integrity that matters deeply to the democratic process. You have to have both to have valid elections that build the confidence of the electorate.
David, you point out that just in 2008, the Supreme Court gave its stamp of approval on an Indiana voter ID law. So I know I'm asking a really difficult thing here, and that's to climb into the mind of Attorney General Eric Holder. But he has now filed suit against the state of North Carolina, and he's also filed suit against the state of Texas for these voter ID requirements. It seems like this is a clear loss before him. If this goes to the Supreme Court, it's already been approved. What is he doing?
Well, I think this is a loss, but I think what he's doing is pretty clear, really. I mean, what he's trying to do is an end run around the Supreme Court of the United States. What happened is, quite recently, the Supreme Court struck down the pre-clearance requirements of Section 5 of the Voting Rights Act. In other words, there were certain counties in North Carolina, certain segments of states where there had to be pre-clearance before there could be changes in voting laws. And the problem was this pre-clearance process that was imposed years and years ago when there were real violations of voting rights. These pre-clearance requirements were being run through highly ideological bureaucrats. They were outdated, and the Supreme Court rightly struck them down. That outraged Attorney General Holder, that outraged many segments of the Department of Justice, and this is an end run around. And one of the really pernicious aspects of this lawsuit is they're trying to reimpose a pre-clearance requirement on North Carolina merely because they've enacted a policy, like I said, that's in place in Indiana.
Right, the absence
applied in Indiana and many other states with no problems.
The absence of the pre-clearance provision simply changed the burden of proof. Now, it is not North Carolina's job to show that its intentions are not racist. It's the Attorney General's job to show that they are racist. I want to go back to your point about voter integrity. Interestingly, the state of Georgia, passed a voter ID law, I believe, back in 2006, and correct me if I'm wrong, but data shows that from 2006 to 2010, minority participation in Georgia's voting process actually went up. Now, we know that included elections that had the first black candidate for president of the United States, at least on the top of the ticket, but clearly it did not have a depressing effect on voter turnout.
Well, that's right. I mean, and let's go to Indiana, which is another state we've mentioned. It has the same strict voter ID requirement. In 2008, President Obama won the state of Indiana, in the part because of an overwhelming African-American turnout. That was the first time a Democrat had won the state of Indiana in quite some time. So there's just no evidence. In fact, in a lot of this debate about these Department of Justice lawsuits, you've yet to see a single real live human being come forward to say that they've not been able to vote.
Right, yeah.
Everyone who wants to vote, who's eligible, can vote.
It's pointed out often by our opponents that cases of voter fraud are very rare, but in this case the burden of proof is on the DOJ, and they simply can't show this either has a depressing effect or has the intent to discriminate. But David, we appreciate you stopping by and sharing your expertise with us tonight.
Thank you.